Chapter 1046, Thief Shouting Thief. The scene of 5,000 armored horsemen rushing into the palace shocked everyone. The civilians had not seen such a scene in a long time. Some people were secretly watching this scene from a distance. Then, the handsome young man leading the horsemen looked at them and smiled. The smile was warm but ferocious. It was warm because the young man did not have a murderous look on his face. However, he wore magical armor and blended in with the ferocious horsemen. He suddenly seemed very malicious. This was a very conflicting feeling, but there was harmony within the Weiwu army. The Weiwu army was pumped up. There was no other army other than the Weiwu army who had never lost a battle, unless they had never fought before. The customs in the palace had become more refined and cultured. It seemed to have changed when the old king of gods started writing poems. Later on, even the people of the sword hut started to pursue beauty. The palace of the king of gods and the sword hut, the two strongest sacred grounds, had become cultured. How could everyone else not do the same? Recently, the children of the palace did not like going out of the palace to gain experiences. Only Li Fengfeng from the Li family had participated in the sword hut selections this year. This was a clue. But the people of the Luniverse had genes that aided them in combat. Their peace was achieved by the blood of their ancestors. How could a training culture lack battles? The bloodthirsty Weiwu army had started killing from the east entrance of the palace. The sword hut, who was in charge of guarding the palace, did not even care. The soldiers of the Weiwu army simply got off their horses at the end of the road. Even the wealthy families in the palace did not go out of their houses. No one wanted to be involved in this bloodshed. The heads of the families sat in their respective houses. They looked at their extravagant decorations and their beautiful wives beside them. They suddenly thought that the foundation of the wealthy families in the palace was not the ability to seek luck and avoid calamity. It was pure strength. Turbulent times had come. Some people were eliminated by the times because they craved ease and comfort. They thought about how the Sun and Song families had worked together to buy magical armor. All of them knew that these pieces of armor were for the young commander of the Weiwu army. But they felt amused. What could the small Weiwu army do? But the Weiwu army who they had laughed about had now entered the palace to build diplomatic ties. Of course, if the Weiwu army messed around, some of the wealthy families could work together and sanction them. But what if they used all of their magical armor? What if the Weiwu army expanded by several times? Earlier, they had thought that as long as Lu Shu had not advanced to the Master Realm, the Weiwu army would not have an established foundation in this training culture. But after the battle on the Limestone Road, who dared to be sure that this young man would not be able to advance to the Master Realm? Luniverse and his Weiwu army were like sharks that had suddenly come to the peaceful palace and Luniverse. They caused all the creatures to awaken. They had to wake up. If not, they would die. Earlier on, Lu Shu had felt that the 21 people behind him were like wolves. But they had far too few people. The Weiwu army was the true wolf. Li Haitan shouted, "Great Lord, we are here to save you." Lu Yizhao, who was beside him, slapped the back of Li Haitan's head. Does the Great Lord have to be saved? Yes, yes, yes. Great Lord, we are here to eliminate the bandits. Lu Shu was speechless. Lu Xiaoyu was silent. Eliminate the bandits? Everyone was observing the situation from various places. Some used messenger mirrors to watch what was happening live from hidden lookouts. The scenes and sounds would be transmitted back home as quickly as possible. When they heard Li Haitan say that they were here to eliminate bandits, they were speechless. Had they come all the way to the palace to eliminate bandits? Huh? Were there bandits in the palace? Wait. There were bandits. The Weiwu army was previously a group of bandits. They were from the Azure Dragon village, and subsequently escape poverty and make a fortune. What was happening? A group of bandits had come to the palace and shouted thief. If Li Heighten were to hear this, he would be unhappy. They were indeed from the Azure Dragon Village in the past, but after they had started doing homework and attending cultural classes, they were called the Azure Study Group. When Lu Shu saw the Wei Wu army arrive, he felt that he was successful in his change of strategy, although he did not expect the Wei Wu army to come. He did not expect them to be daring enough to storm the palace. Lu Shu was used to making a living by wandering from place to place with Lu Xiaoyu. Thus, when the Heavenly Network wanted to recruit them, they faced many difficulties. Even Yeting's accidental advance to Shinsongjing was because of Lu Shu. Although they had joined the Heavenly Network later on, it was simply the Heavenly Network. Now, they had come to the Luniverse with the mentality that they were visitors. They planned to leave at any time. They could go, but would the Wei Wu army follow them? Lu Shu felt that there was no need to force them to do so. They could part without hard feelings. From the very beginning, Lu Shu had built a cooperative relationship with them. He would be able to cut the knot as smoothly as he had tied it. Thus, when Lu Shu came to the palace, he did not allow anyone to follow him. He did not want to involve them in the true danger. But now, they had met him here. They were willing to risk their lives for him. Great Lord, get on. Li Heighten jumped into the sky from his horse. Then, Lu Yizhao pulled him to his own horse. The two of them shared one horse. This movement was very smooth. It was as if it had been discussed in advance. This strong horse had been prepared for Lu Shu as well. Lu Shu smiled. He grabbed the halter of the horse and jumped up. The moment he sat up straight, he stretched his hand to the ground. Lu Xiaoyu, who was underground, shot up her hand. In a second, Lu Xiaoyu was on the same horse as Lu Shu, tightly holding on to his waist. These movements were very smooth as well. They had not discussed this, but had natural chemistry. The 21 tattooed underlings turned and ran. The Wei Wu army followed behind them. They ran towards the south of the palace. The Wei Wu army split into 3 groups to encircle and intercept the enemy. It was as if no one was in the palace. The various stakeholders in the palace were speechless. Jiang Shuyi, who was on the rear mountain of the sword hut, was dumbfounded when he saw this as well. It should have been a bloody scene, but with this twist, it's as if Lu Shu is playing a turn-based game. Slowly, the 21 tattooed underlings were chased to the southwest corner of the palace. But it was as if they had an escape route. Their leader took out a purple pearl and suddenly shattered it into pieces. Then, the 21 tattooed underlings entered a space pathway and disappeared. Lu Shu was shocked. What was this? They had created a portal. He stared at the spot where the 21 tattooed underlings had disappeared. Suddenly, he maneuvered the halter towards the west entrance of the palace. Let's get out of the palace and go home. Chapter 1047, A Good Dream. Lu Shu had finally completed everything he had wanted to do in the palace. He had joined the sword hut. Although he did not find the way home, he encountered Jiang Shuyi by accident. Although he had not found a way to break the barrier between the worlds, the space pathway had opened up by accident. According to Jiang Shuyi, the space pathway had closed temporarily, but it had been opening more frequently in recent times. Perhaps the Earth and the Luniverse would be completely connected one day. They were finally going home. Lu Shu had been waiting for this day to come for far too long. He led the Wei Wu army to gallop towards the west. Other than the sound of metal and horses, there were no other sounds in the palace. A night of battles had finally ended. The morning sun was rising. Sunlight shone over the walls of the palace onto their bodies. Lu Shu suddenly caused his horse to stop. Then, the Wei Wu army neatly stopped where they were. The entire Wei Wu army followed Lu Shu and looked to the east. The sunlight represented the new life of the Wei Wu army. There was a breeze. The red tassels on their helmets were like flags that fluttered in the wind. Many years later, the boss of the Song Ji, Xiaomingzi, recalled the events that had happened. The Weiwu army quietly stood at the west entrance for a very long time. No one in the palace dared to disturb them. That day, the blood on the limestone road dyed the entire ground red. We spent a long time scrubbing the roads clean. But for some reason, that morning, I suddenly felt that the universe was very interesting. The sunrise that morning was particularly beautiful as well. When the Weiwu army once again galloped out of the palace, it was as if the palace had returned to normal in an instant. It was like someone who had been holding their breath suddenly dared to breathe out. Was the strength of the Weiwu army that frightening? Probably not. No matter how strong the small Weiwu army was, as long as they did not have a master, there was no need for the wealthy families in the palace to give in to them. But the potential Lu Shu had shown tonight was something called a future. It had been a very long time since such a strong rank one had appeared in the universe. Many people started to think. The Weiwu army was an army from the north region, and Duanmu Huangqi was fighting with the north region. If Wen Zaifu was willing to protect Lu Shu, it might be worth it to invest in Lu Shu. But they did not know that they had missed the best timing. The moment the Weiwu army passed through the west entrance, they were no longer on the same level. The wealthy families in the palace were used to making what was good even better. They knew that it would be more memorable for them to provide timely help. But they did not dare to take the risk. After all, Lu Shu's enemy was a lord of heaven. Some thought that if Wen Zaifu did not step up and protect Lu Shu, it would not mean anything even if Lu Shu had killed 12 patrons. He would be continually chased by Duanmu Huangqi. Duanmu Huangqi would not rest until Lu Shu was dead. Lu Shu did not directly return to Nanning City. Instead, he led the Weiwu army to a mountain creek where Zhang Weiyu and the rest were waiting. Zhang Weiyu, Dong Yi, and the rest of the imperial palace soldiers did not have any strength. Riding horses over such a long distance would take a huge toll on their bodies. How would they have the strength to commit a massacre with the Weiwu army? Thus, they could only hide in a concealed location and wait for the return of the Weiwu army. Luckily, Zhang Weiyu and the rest of the imperial palace soldiers were very familiar with the palace. They had lived there for a very long time. They definitely knew the best places to conceal themselves. Furthermore, as former imperial palace soldiers, they knew many secrets ordinary people did not know. But when Zhang Weiyu saw the Weiwu army head to the palace to save Lu Shu, he suddenly felt very melancholic. He, too, was once daring and energetic like them. In a flash, spring had turned into winter. They had wasted 23 years of their lives watching spring turn into autumn, waiting for nothing. Some people discussed in private about whether they should tell Lu Yizhao that Lu Shu was not the person they were waiting for. But Zhang Weiyu shook his head and said, "Is that important? Do you think Lu Yizhao is happy now?" "He does seem very happy," said someone. "Then why should we tell him about the truth? If what we are waiting for is destined never to appear again, why not let him be immersed in this good dream? Why do we have to wake him up and suffer with us?" Zhang Weiyu asked. All the imperial palace soldiers were soldiers. That was right. Lu Yizhao was now very happy. He had found his king and a role that he was suitable for. If this was a good dream, then they should let Lu Yizhao live in this dream. Back then, they had trained Lu Yizhao as well. They saw Lu Yizhao as their own biological younger brother. Back then, they had misunderstood Lu Yizhao, but now, they knew that Lu Yizhao was waiting like them. If we did not have our mission, I would like to follow Lu Shu and go on an expedition. Being able to ride a horse at high speed in the palace would be amazing. But it is a pity that we were born at the wrong time. So, we should just continue waiting. Zhang Weiyu smiled and said to the rest of the imperial palace soldiers, "Let Lu Yizhao fly free." They were envious of Lu Yizhao. They were willing to help him succeed, but they had to wait for what they were waiting for. At that moment, there was the sound of metal and galloping in the distance. Zhang Weiyu and the rest turned to look. They silently heaved a sigh of relief. All the imperial palace soldiers here were experienced. They could estimate how many soldiers had returned just based on the sound of them approaching. There were no critical injuries or fatalities. The first person who came into view was Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu on the same horse. Behind Lu Xiaoyu was the Weiwu army, whose vigor was at their peak. But when Lu Shu led the Weiwu army back, he did not get off his horse. Instead, he quietly sat on his horse and looked down at Zhang Weiyu. If I tell you that there is a method for you to continue your foundation, would you believe me? Zhang Weiyu was dumbfounded. The entire Weiwu army was dumbfounded. Was there really a method to continue their foundation? They had never heard of it. But for some reason, Zhang Weiyu subconsciously chose to believe him. Before they could answer, Lu Shu calmly asked, "If I help you to continue your foundation, there is one condition. You will accompany me on my expedition until the person who you are waiting for has come. Are you willing to do so?" No persuasion, no forcing, no treaty of alliance. "Yes," said Lu Shu. Zhang Weiyu took in a deep breath. "I, Zhang Weiyu, will represent the 56 Imperial Palace soldiers to thank you. If what we have been waiting for does not appear, we will give our lives to you. But if he really comes, we hope that you will understand." Lu Shu suddenly laughed cheerily. "Yes, yes. Don't hesitate. There is going to be a tough battle immediately." "Against who?" "Duanmu Huangqi." Zhang Weiyu had just said that Lu Yizhao had been living in a good dream. Now, he felt like he was dreaming as well. Chapter 1048, Recover the Foundation. Before Lu Shu said that he wanted to help Zhang Weiyu and the rest continue their foundation, they had never thought in this direction, because it had never happened. This rigid awareness made them used to one thing. A broken foundation was irreversible. But now that Lu Shu had said so, they could not help but believe him. Lu Xiaoyu sat on the horse with a calm expression on her face. She knew that Lu Shu had been very diligent in keeping this secret. Since the magically rich era began and Lu Shu was able to train, this secret had existed, but remained a closely guarded one. Niating, Li Xianyi, and Chen Beili had all eaten one each. But no one knew how many refresher fruits Lu Shu had. Before they ate the fruit, they did not know that if the effects of the fruit were made public, it would cause a great commotion. Now, Lu Shu had decided to take out refresher fruits for Zhang Weiyu and the rest to eat. On one hand, Lu Shu admired the personal integrity of Zhang Weiyu and the rest. On the other hand, Lu Shu needed even stronger assistance. Everyone knew how strong the West region was. They also knew how strong Duanmu Huangqi was. If Lu Shu wanted to attack the Black Feather Army and the forces controlled by Duanmu Huangqi, he had to have the equivalent strength. The people on Earth had started training far too late. Niating was the only person out of the 6 billion on Earth who had advanced to Shinsongjing. Of course, Lu Shu did not know that Shi Xuejin had advanced, but generally speaking, Niating's natural endowments were hard to imagine. But what about ordinary people? The Heavenly Network only had 3 or 4 rank 1s. Yesterday, 31 rank 1s had attacked Lu Shu. How could the Earth defeat the West region? If the space pathway was going to open, then Lu Shu had to make plans in advance. In addition to Duanmu Huangqi, the 21 tattooed soldiers who had appeared last night caused everyone to be shocked. It was as if a strong power had been hiding in the Luniverse and was prepared to cause trouble. Who were they? Lu Shu had thought that the fog in front of him had dispersed, but it had suddenly gathered again. Yi Qian, Li Liang, Lu Yizhao, and the rest quietly stood behind Lu Shu. Lu Shu looked at Zhang Weiyu and the rest. "I know that you were once Imperial Palace soldiers. I also know that these years have been very difficult for you. I know that you incessantly want to regain the glory of the past. But from today onwards, all that is in the past." There were times when Lu Shu did not want to see people like Zhang Weiyu, who were former heroes, fall like this. Lu Shu remembered when Zhang Weiyu was drunk. He had told Lu Shu that an old friend of his could no longer take it and committed suicide. That old friend was in so much suffering that he could not even eat. He could no longer bear it. When Lu Shu thought about it, his heart would ache. But, in the face of destiny, no one had a choice. Or, it could be said that the result was completely up to you. He jumped off the horse. He passed a bright red fruit to every imperial palace soldier. There was an excitement that was hard to conceal beneath their calm expressions. Was this the fruit that would allow them to continue their foundation? After Lu Shu finished giving out the fruits, he calmly said, "Eat the fruit." The imperial palace soldiers ate the fruit in one bite. No one thought that any problems would occur. With their current state, it would not take much for Lu Shu to kill them. After they ate the fruit, they suddenly felt that this fruit was sweet and sour. It was very delicious, but there was no other reaction. Only Lu Xiaoyu looked at Lu Shu with a strange expression on her face. Lu Shu paused for 2 seconds. "What you have just eaten is called the Virgin Mary fruit in my hometown. That is its scientific name. Its common name is the cherry tomato. I am worried that it would not be very suitable for you to eat such a valuable thing. Thus, I am giving you some buffer." From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 999. From Dong Ye's distress, plus 999. From Lu Shu looked at his system's back end. Good. He had gained back his losses. This time, he passed a refresher fruit to everyone. But this time, Zhang Weiyu and the rest looked at him with some doubt. What about this one? Virgin David fruit? Zhang Weiyu did not believe him. His excitement just now had been for nothing. Was Lu Shu playing around with them? But they still had to eat the fruit. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, they could not give up. But this time, when they threw the fruit in their mouths, Zhang Weiyu and the rest suddenly realized that the fruit had no taste. It was as if a warm liquid was flowing into their limbs and bones. After their foundation had been destroyed, their vital channels were like dried-up rivers, full of cracks. Their foundation was different from that of Chen Bailey and Li Xianyi's. Li Xianyi and Chen Bailey's foundations had only been harmed. They could still continue training, but their foundations could no longer take much more burden. On the other hand, the foundations of Zhang Weiyu and the rest had been completely destroyed. They could not even train. Thus, the speed of their recovery was much slower than that of Li Xianyi and the rest. Zhang Weiyu and the rest stood there blankly. When they realized that they could once again see their organs, they could not wait any longer. They checked their foundations. They had recovered. They had completely recovered. Li Haitan and the rest knew that Zhang Weiyu must have been very strong in the past, but when they sensed 56 people returning to their rank 1 strength, they were shocked by the waves of energy. Even if they did not use their sensory abilities, they could clearly sense everything, because the waves of energy were far too strong. It was as if there was a furnace heating up the heaven and the earth. The blood vessels on their face were swelling due to the heat. The practitioners in the palace had felt this as well. They all looked in this direction. What in the world happened in the palace? Strange things were happening one after another. But no one knew what had happened. No one had the courage to see what was happening. The sky was temporarily distorted. Some thought that someone had advanced to rank 1, and a heavenly vision was about to appear. But the distortion disappeared quickly. The clouds were calm and the wind was light. Lu Shu observed Zhang Weiyu and the rest. He wanted to know whether a heavenly vision would occur when one regained their rank 1 strength. If this was the case, with 56 returning to their original strength in the same space, whose heavenly vision would dominate. But it had been extinguished. Lu Shu looked at the sky, puzzled. Had it been too complex that even the natural laws could not deal with this? At the next moment, the clear and vast sound echoed through the sky once again. Twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Just as Lu Shu thought that the natural laws would choose Zhang Weiyu, Dong Ye's heavenly vision had occurred. The natural laws had chosen Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. What kind of logic was this? What did this have to do with me? Chapter 1049, Cheating. The situation became awkward. Zhang Weiyu and the rest were inexperienced and did not know what it was like to return to their peak realms. However, the problem came. Even if they were unaware of what was happening, nobody would think that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star would be their sound of Tao. There was something amiss. At that moment, Zhang Weiyu turned to Lu Shu suddenly and Lu Shu shouted, "Whose sound of Tao is this?" This sentence caused Zhang Weiyu and the rest to be stunned and they looked at each other helplessly. Yes, apart from the 56 of them who returned to rank 1, who else would it be? Lu Xiaoyu rolled her eyes. She knew that Lu Shu did this on purpose as nobody else was in the palace to have heard the song of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Nevertheless, Zhang Weiyu and the rest were really stunned by this. At this moment, Lu Shu felt that he was extremely brilliant. He managed to get rid of others' suspicion successfully. Although there was nothing suspicious about him, the glare that Zhang Weiyu gave him made him worry. Xiaoyu would not expose him, right? Lu Shu was thinking about how he might make his way back home if he rushed to the borders of the North region and the West region. Nobody cared about what the rest thought afterwards. At that moment, Zhang Weiyu and the rest began to question themselves. In reality, this sound of Tao was not as powerful as the one when Lu Shu advanced to rank 1. By right, there should not be any sounds of Tao when one regained their powers, but this time, there were too many people who regained their powers. However, whose sound of Tao should be chosen amongst them? Or rather, there should not be any sound of Tao in the first place. Then, what should replace the sound of Tao, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? Lu Shu guessed that it was probably what happened. This time, Lu Shu and the rest were already more than 100 kilometers away from the palace. Therefore, not the entire palace was covered. Initially, the different parties had lost hope in finding the person who had advanced. However, because of the aggressive wave of energy from Lu Shu's side, they could not help but to feel suspicious. The slaves in the wealthy family began moving again and asked the people at the borders, "Did you hear Twinkle Twinkle Little Star earlier on?" Then, everyone realized, to their horror, that the northeast region was not covered by the sound of Tao. There was nothing problematic about the volume of the sound of Tao. People who were at the borders could hear it equally clearly. However, if they stepped out of the borders for an inch, they would not be able to hear anything at all. Therefore, the sound of Tao was instantly located. Although a specific location was unable to be obtained, it could be confirmed that it was located out of the city at the side where the wave of energy occurred. Who on earth left the city at such an early timing? Wasn't it the Weiwu army? At this moment, everyone figured out that the owner of the sound of Tao was Lu Shu. Last night, some people were still wondering who was the best apart from the real master, the advancer who had a terrifying range of sound of Tao or Lu Shu. Then, they hoped to look for that advancer so as to invest in him or follow him. However, everyone neglected the main character in the palace's bloody battle last night because they thought that Lu Shu was already a rank 1. Now, everyone realized that Lu Shu was the advancer. No wonder, he was so stunningly powerful. Yes, this made sense. This made sense. Or else, it would be extremely strange if two extremely powerful rank 1 geniuses appeared overnight. Since when were geniuses so easily found? They were not easily found at all, it was Lu Shu. However, there was something that did not make sense. Wasn't Lu Shu already a rank 1 before he made the sound of Tao? Why did the sound of Tao sound for a second time? Alright, even if there was a second time, nobody could explain the third time. Are you done or not? Moreover, your sound of Tao is too characteristic who sings such songs as their sound of Tao. Not to mention about nursery rhymes, nobody sang songs for their sound of Tao. If Lu Shu found out about what the people in the palace thought, he would feel extremely wronged. It really was not him. Just one moment ago, in the Sun residence, Sun Zhongyang and Sun Xuanwen were sitting facing each other. Sun Xuanwen was attempting to analyze the situation for his son. He doted on his son a lot and therefore helped him for this important matter. However, after several rounds of analysis, there were still many loopholes. Sun Xuanwen talked to himself, why did Lu Shu insist on killing the 12 soldiers? Was it because he was almost suppressed by Duanmu Huangqi? Perhaps. Sun Zhongyang asked, Dad, you think he killed others because of that? That makes him someone with a very bad temper. You don't know that there is a type of person in the world with this character. However, if one was powerful, one would not hold grudges, sighed Sun Xuanwen. I think this young man is like this. Moreover, he had endured it for a long time and attacked only after Duanmu Huangqi left. However, there are many inexplicable problems. Why did Duanmu Huangqi rush to leave the palace? Who are the 21 assassins? Why did they go after Lu Shu? Who was the advancer that night? This matter was extremely complicated and Sun Xuanwen could not figure it out. At this moment, the Sun family received news that Lu Shu was the advancer that night. Sun Xuanwen was stunned and went deep into thoughts, and Sun Zhongyang did not dare to disturb his father. After 2 hours, Sun Xuanwen suddenly laughed bitterly. Power, power, without powers, everything would be in vain. This must be cheating. From today onwards, I will isolate myself, and if I do not make a breakthrough to the master realm, I will not come out of the house. Sun Zhongyang was stunned when he heard this. What on earth was happening? Why did his father get so triggered by Lu Shu's advancement? Then what should he do? Follow his father? At this moment, Jiang Shui and Gu Lingfei looked at the people in the palace on the rear mountain of the sword hut. They saw the Wei Wu army exit from the west gate, looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky, listened to the sound of Tao and waited for the palace to turn into chaos. Gu Lingfei suddenly said, Senior, you knew that it was his sound of Tao last night, right? Jiang Shui smiled and nodded. Yes. Why is his sound of Tao so powerful? This has way surpassed the realm that all of us know. Does that mean he can advance into the master realm or even surpass it? Gu Lingfei did not understand. Chapter 1050, Lu Shu's Cards. Occasionally, Gu Lingfei felt that the young man was good-looking and felt that he was a genius. After all, he was the one who discovered how the sword spirit manifested and had changed the sword hut's history. However, Gu Lingfei never thought that he would be so powerful. Jiang Shui laughed. To be honest, I did not expect such great movements too. Did this happen before? Did the old king of gods and master have such a wide range? Asked Gu Lingfei. I'm not very sure. Jiang Shui smiled and shook his head. We didn't have the chance to see how they rose from rank 2 to rank 1. When I first met the king of gods, he was one of the top of the world. Same for master. Gu Lingfei thought about it and replied, you have a point. However, master is so powerful, how did she get tricked? Jiang Shui froze. This was a taboo topic amongst the disciples of the sword hut. Who would be willing to mention that their master and ancestor were tricked? That sounded extremely weird. Even if the person who tricked the master was the ruler of the universe, it felt extremely weird. However, Jiang Shui and Gu Lingfei, as the core members of the sword hut, did not have to intentionally avoid this topic. However, Jiang Shui seemed like the only person who knew the truth. Gu Lingfei looked at his senior discipline curiously. Jiang Shui suddenly said calmly, Master said that he is very good-looking. Gu Lingfei was stunned. Hold on, senior, are you taking advantage of the fact that I haven't seen him before? At most, I would say that he has decent features, but he can't be described as good-looking. Actually, Master was extremely angry over this matter. However, she did not reveal his feelings to anyone, sighed Jiang Shui. I was still young then. One day, I asked why Master was feeling angry when I saw her alone. She replied, "Who are you guys to say that he is not good-looking?" Gu Lingfei was stunned for a moment. The people in the Luniverse thought that the sword hut owner had a good relationship with the old king of gods. For example, when the owner of the sword hut said that she wanted 30% of the scenery, the old king of gods gave her 30%. However, they had many conflicts too. For example, the sword hut owner often embarrassed the king of gods in public. For example, the sword hut owner removed half the palace of the king of gods, scolded the old king of gods in the library, or left the sword hut many years ago and disappeared. Some people felt that this was equivalent to sharing sorrows but not sharing happiness. There could only be one ruler in the Luniverse. After the world became peaceful, conflicts would naturally arise. However, the disciples of the sword hut knew that when the statue of the sword hut owner was built on the grass patch in the sword hut, it was the sword hut owner's request to build the statue. However, who knew that the sword hut owner was tricked willingly, simply because she thought that the old king of gods was good-looking? Moreover, she insisted that everyone in the Luniverse ought to feel that he was good-looking. Jiang Shui exclaimed suddenly, 12 years ago, before Master left, he changed a law in the Luniverse. I don't think you know what the law is, but I can't reveal it now. Gu Lingfei suddenly wondered what relationship allowed the resolute master to turn childlike and take such actions. Just as everyone thought that Lu Shu was about to complete his third advancement, the Weiwu army got a new life. Initially, although the Weiwu army was powerful as a whole, they lacked the important superior battle capability. Therefore, if the Weiwu army fought against a sufficient number of rank 1 experts, they could have ended up scattered. This was not because the Weiwu army were not determined, but rather because if the rank 1 experts were able to control the air after they left the palace, the army who was below the rank of a rank 1 would lose their advantage. Although the rank 2 class had the ability to attack in the air, for example, the tactic of flying sword. However, if it was so simple, there was no significance in flying at all. The speed at which rank 1 experts flew was way faster than their speed on the ground. Moreover, they had a huge advantage if they attacked from above. However, things had changed. Lu Shu exchanged 56 rank 1 experts with the refresher fruits. Apart from that, he had to take into account of the 2 commanders who had recently joined the Weiwu army, Yi Qian and Li Liang. Including Lu Shu himself as well as Johnson, Anthony and the bishop who was under the control of Lu Xiaoyu, the number of rank 1s reached 62 people. Moreover, Lu Xiaoyu was able to advance in rank anytime. She only needed the step at which Lu Shu ate the fruit on her behalf. Therefore, the number of rank 1 experts in the Weiwu army could be considered to be 63. That was extremely powerful and an ordinary army could not match up to them. Lu Shu finally dared to bring the Weiwu army to look for the Black Feather army. Zhang Weiyu and the rest had mixed feelings about this. After gaining back something they had lost for 23 years, they could not simply describe their feelings with the word excitement. However, no matter what, their task was to help Lu Shu win the battle. They did not care if the opponent wanted the entire West region. Moreover, Lu Shu had other contingencies. He had kept his backup for nearly a year and he could finally make use of it now. When Lu Xiaoyu initially received the bronze armor, Chaos bit the dragon stage, ate the small white fish. The heavenly network obtained the flood of bronze. Meanwhile, Lu Shu also obtained a trident and 100 sets of black armor. The ranks of the soldiers of the sea was extremely stringent. Those who wore the black armor were like the wealthy of today, they had power over the lives of the people of the sea. However, none of the 100 black-armored soldiers survived in the battle against Cloudy and Chen Bailey, and their armor were kept by Lu Shu. At that moment, Lu Shu thought that the 100 black armor could be useful in the future, it felt like a premonition. Therefore, he did not keep any of the bronze armor but kept the black armor. When Old Man Chen said he would keep the secret for Lu Shu to repay Lu Shu's favor for the refresher fruit, Lu Shu agreed. What astonished Lu Shu was the fact that the 52 black armored soldiers of rank 3 collaborated and made use of the armor to stop the metal puppet, Cloudy. Sometimes, Lu Shu wondered what would happen if a rank 1 expert wore that armor. Then, Lu Shu would laugh. After all, there were not many rank 1s in the world. However now, whatever he had imagined really happened. Li Haitan passed the black armor to Zhang Weiyu and the rest, then threw the trident to Li Haitan and the rest. The weapons Lu Shu had were always expensive and more expensive than armor. Yet now, Lu Shu took out over 5,000 tridents and this shocked Li Haitan and Zhang Weiyu. They knew that Lu Shu was capable, rich and was extremely good at making money. However, they did not expect Lu Shu to sneakily keep so much fortune.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things that we beg to know. Like what did this all mean? There's no